All right. Looks like we should be live. Let me get some music. Performance seems okay-ish. I can't click the music tab. Is it still the performance? Like the video is smooth now. How's everyone doing? We're getting set up. I'm having some issues with the restream UI. There we go. Looks like Allison switched on the music. Thank you, Allison. Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the lo-fi. Good choice, too. Okay. So, probably don't want to be showing my calendar at the moment. Let me switch to the right OBS scene. And I should have a better microphone today as well, because I realized I was using the one in the MacBook instead of my nice microphone. So we should be good and better there. And yeah, let me switch to this. Bam. All right, so how's everyone doing? Let me get it to where I can see the chat a bit better if I need to. A little bit stuffy today. But yeah. So where did we leave off yesterday? We were able to get Go and JavaScript plugins working inside of our Go CLI tool. We discovered what the issue was with making HTTP requests. We have to use the one that's part of the plugin development kit. And we also need to allow the host from within our plugin context. And that might have been what was going wrong when I tried to do this stuff with GitLens. So let's try and make this happen with GitLens too. Why not? So I'm going to get that going right now. And I may ditch the hoodie I have on here in a bit, but for now I'm just going to turn up the fan behind me. There we go. So yeah, Allison's acting as moderator and DJ. Thank you. All right, though. So I know that I have GitLens pulled down somewhere. Let's just open it up in a new tab then. We've got it there at the top level. I thought I had it in here as well. Yeah. Yes, and I had done that. Okay, so let's check out that other one. So I want to leave that merge conflict just in case I need to get a screenshot of it again. There we go. All right, so we just have the origin on this one, which is fine because, again, I don't plan on making an actual pull request with this stuff yet. This is all discovery, just trying to figure out and understand things. Okay, so we have updated GitLens. We're up to date now. Cool. One thing we're going to need to do first is get started by installing the SDK for JavaScript, and that is just this one. And yeah, this one takes a little bit. There are quite a few packages in the VS Code GitLens project, which is fine. How's everyone doing out there today, though? And yeah, once again, if you're unaware of why we're doing these streams, we are doing a promotion for DEVEXDAYS24. Up to 80% off, depending on your location, just using code DEVEXDAYS24 when you do your checkout. So it's basically free at that point. You should probably sign up. The sale is going to be going all the way through August 25th. So, yep, check it out. It's pretty cool stuff. Big thing to remember is that GitKraken is more than just a desktop GUI for Git. Instead, it's more of a platform now. We have the desktop client, we have GitLens, we have the CLI tool, we have GitKraken.dev. All of these different tools are actually made for team collaboration and understanding things around Git more so than just Git. Now, it is still one of the best desktop clients for Git, but I think the team collaboration features like Launchpad and Cloud Patches are quite nice. And Launchpad's my favorite. But basically with Launchpad, you can see all of your issues and your pull requests all in one place instead of having to navigate different repos or even completely different services. Maybe you're doing your code is hosted on GitHub, but you're using Jira for your tickets. So that's two separate places you got to go to look at things. Instead, you can get all of that in one clean view in whatever surface you want to use, the desktop, the CLI, or GitKraken.dev. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. Let's see if we finished installing. We did. Nice. All right, so with that installed, we pop open a VS Code instance of it. I may have to start closing some of these as I run into performance issues, but we'll see. I don't think I need the dev container thing. I'm a little lazy about it. I think we're good. Okay. So here we are inside of GitLens, which is fully open source, so I don't have to be nearly as careful about what I show on stream. So that's nice. Little easier to just navigate around and not be too worried about it compared to the CLI, which is not open source yet. Okay, so I did a little bit of discovery in the past. Looking for where like the entry point for the application is. And I believe it's this extension.ts file. Yep. So inside of this extension.ts file, we see this activate function. This is what fires, I believe, when you are turning the extension on. Right? Like when you have installed it and enabled it. I'm also pretty sure this has to run when VS Code is just like starting things up like fresh as well. So it's not going to run in a continuous way, but when we do our like restart of the extension or the debug process, it will run. So this is probably the place that we can do this. That makes the most sense. So they've got this part, and one thing I remember running into, and we'll double check and verify as we do it here, is that the API they're trying to use for this create plugin when we do a remote URL is actually a streamed like create plugin kind of thing. Let me double check that. And I think we'll want to do this, but then may have to comment this out when we actually try and build. I can't remember that part. And yeah, that require we don't do there. Oh, it does look like. No, okay, so it's the PDK that we would import like that. This one should work. Yeah, create plugin. Cool. So we'll do their count vowels. I just want to verify this, that we don't have access to some stuff in that context. And we will grab that. Now this is theoretically, it's possible that it could be null. So instead, we'll do that. And now that we've done that, I believe we just want to head over to debug here and do our watch and run stuff. But hold on, one thing I remember is we want to do a yarn build first. This does a little bit of setup that I believe the watch process needs to depend on. So yeah, while this is going, let me pour some more tea. Let me get some fresh tea bags in there too. Still building. How's everyone out there? What you up to? I got a keen eye on chat. Feel free. Ask any questions you want, etc. The microphone should be better today than it was yesterday because I was misconfiguring that. And yes, GitLens is a fairly large project. It does take some time to build, especially on this machine that is CPU bound by a bunch of stuff that I'm running, right? Technically, it's like the unified kernel or whatever, you know, the M3 chip or whatever. But I believe that they actually end up competing with each other for RAM, right? Because it's like the universal memory. So even if I'm doing a lot of like graphics card stuff that shouldn't be messing with the CPU, when they're in contention for RAM, you will run into like CPU bound issues just because of GPU stuff. At least that's my understanding of it. I could be wrong. Yeah, hope I'm not getting sick. That would not be ideal. All right, so the compiler of the web views is finished. And yeah, I wasn't kidding. This is a process. I think the music is interesting, while we wait, basically because this is AI generated. Now, maybe lo-fi is one of the easiest things to AI generate. I don't know, but yeah, it's pretty passable. Okay, so we were able to finish building. Now I want to do the watch and run thing, not there. This will fire up the Yarn watch for us and then also launch a new VS Code instance that will have the extension running in it. Now, one thing that we may want to do is create an output context. I remember doing that from my debugging previously. I forget the APIs for that. So VS Code create output context extension. That's pretty close. And they call it a channel. Hey, all right, so this is the VS Code instance for our local version of GitLens. Let me double check this part though. I believe this was it. Yeah. Aren't you glad I didn't say banana? So basically we want to create an output channel and then just append a line to it. Easy enough. I like it when people mix in something slightly funny. This is definitely a reference to that knock knock joke, right? So yeah, WASI is an experimental feature. Yep. What I want to do here, though, is we're going to create this. This is just going to be, let's call it XDism output channel. And we do want to bring in window from VS Code, which we're doing. Perfect. We'll call this XDism. And XDism output channel is a const. We're not going to be overwriting that. And instead of console log here, that is where we do the outline. So this would be XDism output channel dot append line. And because it needs to be a string, we can just do that. let's just do this. No out text. Okay, so when we do modify the activate command, it's like easiest just to restart. So then over here, we did get an error activating the extension, and that is because WebAssembly.compile streaming is not a function. That's right. So let me just add that to my notes just to be sure. I think I have it in my previous notes, but you know, I think it's fine. So this note is basically, let me shuffle these a bit better. The error we get, which I hope I can copy. Yes, I didn't want to have to type that out. All right, so activating extension, let's copy the whole thing. All right, so that's one of the errors that we've gotten so far. The next one we're going to have to probably work around is going to be a little trickier. And hey, what's up, Alex? How you doing? Mr. Sir. Cheers. All right, so we know that that is not working because we can't do this remote plugin, but we should be able to load one from the file system, right? I'm pretty sure we can. Let's double check this. What does it take in? It takes in the manifest, which could be any, and then options, which would be XDism plugin options. So let's go look at the docs if we can. That is going to open this file. Is this a d.ts file? It is. It should tell us everything we kind of need. So yeah, plugin. It's going to create the plugin though. So hold on. Wrong type. Given a manifest like. The manifest like is either a manifest, a response, a WebAssembly module, an array buffer, a string, or URL. Okay, so capabilities is not what we care about. We just care about the manifest like. If we do a manifest, what is in that? And that would be manifest wasm. Manifest wasm is defined as a name and a hash as the base of it, but then manifest wasm URL, manifest wasm path. Okay, so path is what we would use to read from the local file system. Okay, so armed with that knowledge, let's go create a manifest. Let me double check and think about this. We'll just create it outside of this. We'll do XDism manifest. And really, path is the only thing that's required. So that'll be fine. So now we just got to remember what that path was that we were passing it as. And we could probably even do like a file system path, right? Like for the create plugin call too. But I think we're good here. So this would just be users. And actually, I think we even have that right here. Perfect. So we can just call our plugin. We can call the TypeScript one or the Go one. Let's just do the TypeScript one for now since we have it. Or actually, no, it's more compelling to do the Go one. Why not? Okay, so we'll do that. Then use WASI. There's probably allowed hosts. Yep. And allowed hosts we can just do as a star. But it's an array of allowed hosts. And this, instead of the string, just becomes that manifest. So yeah, Alex, if you have any questions about what I'm doing, etc., I think we have some commands saved. You know, just feel free, ask any questions you might have. This is interactive. This isn't just me, you know, doing the thing. I like chatting. So if anyone has any questions or you just want to say hi, please feel free to do so. All right, so we do the XDism manifest there. We don't call it count vals. It is called greet. And from there, we might consider this good. Let's restart the extension and see. Ooh, still a failure. Activating extension getlens failed. Expected WASM key in manifest. Really? Let's double check this again. So we go look here. We see manifest like. We see that it would accept a manifest. When we look at a manifest, aha. So manifest actually extends manifest options and WASM. Yes, all right, that's it. So I am a little concerned that the SDK here doesn't have strong typing for the first arg2. Yeah, it doesn't have strong typing for the first arg2 create plugin. In editor, we were not yelled at about a missing key in our manifest object. Okay, so instead, we head back to this, and we're going to call this a manifest instead of manifest WASM, which then should give us some grief because we're no longer doing that, right? So we do WASM here, and that would be an array. And here we have an object, and we pass that path in. And hey, yeah, thanks, Allison, for sending that that message. It may not have made it over to Twitter, where Alex was asking the question from. So just keep that in mind. I do wonder why that's the case, where the Twitch, or sorry, not Twitch, the Twitter and the LinkedIn are read only. I find that very strange. But, oh well. Okay, so we do that. Cannot find manifest. We just bring that in, update the import. And yeah, thanks for sharing that on LinkedIn too. Okay, so now that we've done that part, we should be good. Let's restart the extension host. The moment of truth. Will it blend? Ooh, no ent. So no such file or directory. Loading up users, Chris Griffing, repos, Git Kraken, private, CLI plugin go. Because it wouldn't be in dist, it would be at the top level. Right, so that's the difference in how we're doing the go versus the TypeScript. So instead, just so it's easier later, because I do want to try out both, I'm going to turn this one back into TS, add the dist back, call that good, and let's restart again. Okay, so allowed hosts requires run in worker true. Aha. So there's another config that I need to pass to here. And that is run in worker true. Cool. This is already more progress than I had made on my first attempt because I wasn't aware of the allowed hosts thing. Will it blend? Nope. So I said run in worker true. Let's just save again, maybe restart the whole thing. I'm not sure if the activate got redone. Okay, so here, fetch failed. So the fetch failed. Was that something that we were doing in the Go code? Was that something I did, or is that something else? That is something else. So I believe this new HTTP request method just isn't working. Okay. If we look at what's in the PDK, that's the creation of the request itself. But doing the send is actually the part where fetch failed gets printed? No. Interesting. So where is fetch failed happening? Oh, and the output that we're going to have is going to be over here. But yeah, activating extension, get lens, fetch failed. So that is the trickier bit. We would definitely want to be able to allow HTTP requests for plugin providers. Okay, so hold on. Does that mean we just can't do fetches, or is it just due to how it's being handled? So in our GitLens stuff here, What if we comment all of this out? And we just do something like this. Const foo equals await fetch and that's just a GET request. Is fetch not available globally? Okay. And actually, we do want to do the output channel. And from here, we'll just do, sorry, just got a frog in my throat. Yeah, we'll just do xism output channel, append line, response from server. And I think we might still have to await this, but hold on. Let's do foo dot body. Hold on. What is this? It's going to be a response, correct? Well, it gives us an any, though. Because it's actually not being imported very well. So can't even find it. So let's just try it with node fetch. And then this would be foo dot body. And that would be as a stream. Can we do it as just text? Yes. But that's also a promise, right? Yes. So from here, oh wait. Okay. So we should be able to save that, restart it, and let's see what happens. Looks like the extension is launching just fine. Interesting. Okay. Not ideal. So basically, we can't use the version of like making HTTP requests that the xtism PDK gives us. I believe that we did get this output though, and I don't even think we need that. How do I open the output? Is it? No, not remote window. Here we go. And we can zoom in a bit. So we see output, none from tasks, but we should see some from xtism. And yeah, we get the hello world from the server just fine. Okay. So it isn't necessarily that VS Code is restricting the fetch, but it's probably not providing fetch in the way that they were expecting it in the PDK. Okay. So now let's try this. We do know that we're able to make an actual fetch request. So that's totally verified. And it would be weird if we couldn't do fetch requests from inside a VS Code extension. So it's just a PDK problem. What I think we want to do from here is see if just maybe the JS extension works. And we get the failure again. So yeah, fetch failed. Doesn't matter which one we use. It's just the way that the PDKs are wrapping that stuff. Interesting. So while it's not ideal, I wonder if there would be value in the the SDKs and the PDKs having to work together, where you could define a callback for fetches instead of them having to like bundle it into the PDK. Because if you're in an environment that allows fetch, then you should be good to go. But yeah, this is also part of the idea that it would have to be run in a worker. It actually wouldn't need to be run in a worker if we just pass them a callback. Right, so like the thought would be, oh, it actually has a fetch key? Wait, what? Oh, plot thickens. Really? Well, let's just try that. Oh. So they already thought of it, it seems. They already thought of that. Awesome. Okay. So now we're cooking with fire. Now we're thinking with portals. Awesome. Okay. All right. So now let's just double check, because again, consuming Go code is far more compelling, right? Like write your extension to GitLens in any language you want, and we can just allow you to use it. And yeah, for the SDK, you can just expose a fetch hook. Now, is that only for JavaScript? I don't remember seeing that over in the Go SDK. And maybe because the Go SDK doesn't run into this issue, you might just be fine. So, okay, nice. XDism already thought of it. Good job. Okay, so the next steps then, right? We saved this. Let's do a refresh. And let's just make sure that works as we expect to. Should see the exact same output. Hello, hello world. Nice. Okay. That's pretty awesome. So I guess the next part is to think about how we're going to actually like wire up, like what parts of the plugin even make sense. What would we want to make a plugin for? I would say maybe something based on Launchpad stuff. Yeah, we got to really like think about this. So let's actually open up Launchpad. Oh, did I break something? Okay, so we see Launchpad here at least. Yeah, what would be... I guess here's the thing. We don't necessarily need to worry about what someone would do with the plugin, because for us as like plugin providers, we just want to expose as many like events as we can. So yeah, let's actually start thinking about what building a plugin system even really looks like. It's a two-way system, right? You may want to send data into the extension or into the application, the host, and you may also want to send data or events out of the host into plugins. Okay. Which would then mean we might want to like check for yeah, hold on. So yeah, let's actually start brainstorming what that might look like. We're just gonna do this in a new file. We'll select a language. It'll be Markdown, or let's just say JSON. In this JSON, I think Markdown would actually be better. Change language mode. Yeah, Markdown. So in this Markdown, let's just start scaffolding some of this out. The how do we want to phrase this? There are events from host to extension, and there are hooks, I guess. From extension to host. So let's just assume that maybe there would be a plugin initialize hook. Right, so we'll call it init. Let's start thinking about events too. I think events are actually easier. So maybe like Launchpad, and then within Launchpad there is loaded, pinned, snoozed, something, right, etc. We could do the same thing for we could do the same thing for code suggestions or some other stuff, maybe even just like Git events themselves. I think as far as what we're doing here, we don't need to like come up with the entire system, but we would want to maybe think about the future where we'd have to like document this stuff, and we'd have to actually document it like per surface area. So while there may be common events such as Launchpad events for all of the surface areas, and when I say surface area, I mean either the desktop or GitLens or the CLI tool or gitkraken.dev even maybe, right? Like, I don't know. At that point, there's going to be certain things that are in one and not the other. So in the CLI, you don't actually have Git actions to do, but you would have Launchpad events in the same way, right? So the Launchpad events, code suggestion stuff, those would all be pretty straightforward and common among all of the extensions. But then there would be, you know, Surface specific hooks for the desktop and Git lens about like things that they do with Git. Okay. So I think at least for my notes, documenting documenting things. Each surface at Git-Kraken might not have all the same events / hooks. E.g., GKD, which is the desktop, and Git lens both do Git actions, GK dev and CLI do not. But Launchpad and other features are cross-cutting. I think that's a proper use of the word cross-cutting, but I could be wrong. Okay, so yeah, this is making sense. And this is all just helping me formulate what would go into this talk for Squigglecoff. What we may want to start doing is thinking about how we actually configure the plugins. Right now, we look at our code. We have hard-coded, and actually, let's just put this over in notes. Just keep it all in one place. Plugin API, surface area. Yeah, okay. So we can close that untitled. And yeah, so here we see that we're like hard coding this path. We'd want that to come from like user configuration, right? Now here's the fun thing about how VS Code extensions are made. All of that configuration logic, like not even the logic, just like what configuration options are available, actually gets configured in the package JSON, which means that this package JSON ends up being thousands upon thousands of lines long. So all of the commands need to be set here, right? So when we do bring up the command palette, any of these git lens commands have to be defined in there too. So it's a bit heavy. At some point, it might be useful to actually like generate this package.json file. So, have like files that it is built from. That could be a better developer experience for anyone who just needs to modify these things. But maybe, is it something that you modify that often? I don't know. think it'd be totally possible though. Like you see how we're doing like getlens/editor/annotations? That could easily just be the folder structure. And realistically, menus could be a folder. So yeah, what is contributes? Yep. So that is where all of this stuff is getting configured. So the configuration, this is where you would do settings for GitLens. But then we also saw commands. So contributes is like the top level thing. So basically like building out this contributes prop from like nested folder structure stuff where you have JSON making up stuff like this. That might be really useful. But it also may just be incredibly like indirect and not actually that useful. When we do look at config, we see 1, we see 2. Okay, so yeah, like you have a configuration for inline blame, you have a configuration for code lens. So you basically have like sections of config. That would also end up probably being like a nested folder, but using probably just ID. I think that would make sense. And really, like all this is tangential. This is just me riffing on what I think like just crawling this file is not ideal. I've actually done it for like a mock PR for adding some other features before. And yeah, like knowing where to put things, like, I don't know, like where does this section even start and stop? You know, you would have to like already know what this structure looks like. Whereas like maybe a file tree that then gets built into this section would at least be a little more discoverable. Maybe not. But yeah, if we were thinking about how the user would configure this stuff, it would go somewhere, right? And probably be its own section, right? Like maybe not. Yeah, there are a lot of sections for configuration. Like, wow. So as we get down to these places, what I wonder is, let's actually look at our settings. We can go to here and we can go to GitLens, and GitLens has quite a bit. And these are like each of those like sections we were just seeing. There's a lot of them. But realistically, it might be in advanced. That might be a good place to store this. It could be in experimental. That might be a good place. And what's up there, Victor? How you doing? Welcome. Happy to have you over on the YouTube. If you're curious about what we're doing, feel free and ask. But yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking out loud about how we want to kind of build this thing. Ooh, and 1 second. I forgot to reply to a message. Oh, and I guess I have another message. Yeah, T's looking good. And hey, what's up, Kyle? Mr. Sir? Yeah. Yeah, doing well. And yep, if you have any questions, we have some commands we can pass you about like what we're up to and why we're doing this stuff over on Twitter. Just let me know. And yeah, so basically, I don't think there's a way of doing like a file selector, right? Like if we wanted to add an arbitrary amount of plugins, how would we do that? So let me look at how that works with VS Code in general. So in the past, I have actually had to create my own settings page / web view. Just because there were certain things I couldn't do with their settings UI. But you don't want to do it for your entire plugin. And the one I did that for, if anyone's unaware, I actually want to check on it. HTML Biscuits is an extension I made. How many downloads does it have? Woo! We're almost at 11K. Nice. Nice. And yeah, I haven't had to touch it for years because it does what it needs fairly well. But basically, for this, we end up having, you know, configuration for HTML Biscuits using their UI and all that. But I have another extension called Assorted Biscuits, and that has way more config. So there's global configuration, such as annotation color, annotation prefix, minimum distance, things like that. But then there's language-specific config as well. And that ends up being JSON, but I built a UI for it. And I can look at that real quick, actually. Because I'm just trying to make sure I remember. How any of this works. So yeah, Sorted Biscuits, 2,000 downloads. Nice. This one is kind of fun because it does a biscuit-like thing. And if you're not aware, the biscuit is this part, annotating what that ending bracket is. VS Code does a little bit with like the sticky bars at the top. Some people don't like those sticky bars because it takes up a lot of their vertical space though. So instead, we can annotate what this bracket might be without necessarily having to like click to it to see, and like maybe there's like something that it tells us, which I do believe happens, right? So if we were to click here, we can see like what the path is to where we got. And when doing that with HTML or other code, that is helpful, but you don't always want to have to click at every single place. So yeah, Sorted Biscuits, we installed it. And I want to double check with configuring it. Just because, I don't know, it's fun to go on a tangent every once in a while, isn't it? So we go to settings here and we go and look for assorted biscuits. And here's where we can go edit this. So actually we just do it in the settings JSON. For some reason, I thought I had created like another page for this configuration. It looks like not. Okay. All right, interesting. I'm trying to remember why I had, or why I like had the memory of creating like a whole separate UI. But oh well. So yeah, we followed their guidelines. I do still think it was a nicer experience with the separate UI, but they may have just disallowed that separate UI. So, oh well. Just trying to jog my memory about how this stuff works. But yeah, hey, there we go. We see our code biscuit right there, which we do get as like context with the sticky header. But sometimes you get to a point where, you know, you might not have that sticky header. So you'd have to like click into it. And we're still not getting the fact that we're inside of an if. So yeah, it does look like we got some bugs. Yeah, I would need to set the min distance. Okay, so we definitely have a bug or two. But, oh well, that's not the point. I was just double checking how extension dev works. So now thinking back on how this works, I don't, in their docs here, this is just UX guidelines. This is not necessarily the entire like API, but contribution points, here we go. So yeah, creating commands, here's where configuration happens. And I don't think there is a file picker. So we can set properties. Property schema takes in a description, a markdown description instead of description if you want to do formatting. Takes in a type, and right now it's just number, string, Boolean. Oh, here we go. Okay, so theoretically, we could do an array of numbers, strings, or Booleans. The strings would still be like something you have to type out. I don't think there's a way to do a file picker. Interesting. Okay, so how do you specify the type for the array? let's go modify that and just create a setting for it. Right, so we're in configuration properties. We started collapsing a bunch of stuff just for readability. It's going to be down. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to configure in GitLens. It's basically going to be down in the advanced section. I think that's probably the place we want to put it. Or maybe just experimental. So we could probably search for experimental. Here we go. So let's think about this. There's really only one property in the experimental section. Let's just copy and paste this. Ooh, and our biscuits are getting in the way. All right, so assorted biscuits has some bugs. We'll just disable it for now. Oh, because we're in a debug session, we can't actually reboot it. It's fine. We'll deal with the bugs for now. So this one would be GitLens plugins, experimental paths. I think here we would do array. I almost want to see like an example of how that works, because I don't think we're getting any syntax highlighting for this schema, which is a little annoying. Default is empty array. We don't need the enum thing. Specifies the paths to local. It has to be local. XDism plugins. Scope is window. Sure. What does scope actually get used for? Oh, I must have missed it. Okay, so yeah, we might want to have this be like workspace configurable. Okay, so window makes the most sense. Okay, cool. So if we create that, we say it's array. Is there like another prop we can do for... Oh, hold on. We did see an example of array. min items, max items. We can let that be empty. And here we see an example. So it does look like we just passed array and ignored repositories. Here is probably strings, but let's see what that looks like in the UI. So I'm going to call this good. Sure. All right, so we're going to restart this and let's see if we can get it in our settings. I'm just a little curious about like how you would configure an array of items in an extension settings. I've never seen that. Saving package.json. Yeah, this is another problem. Modifying this file and then like prettier trying to kick in can be heavy. Now, it's probably because we're in a debug session and extensions need to restart and all that other stuff. But, oh, yeah, we've, like, hung. Just waiting on saving package.json. Fun. So, okay. We'll let that run a bit more, I guess. And let's start thinking about how the Go, like the CLI, would want to take in plugins. That would just be a command line argument. So that would just be some Cobra. So we go look at it over here. We see our Cobra command, and the command would then have our group. Nah, okay. So this is spreading all of those commands into here. Where does commands come from? Right. A lot of that stuff I don't think is too proprietary, so we're good there. Yeah, we'd want to maybe figure out where would be a good place to do a global plugin argument. And that might be add group. I don't know about that though, because that just takes in ID and title. Interesting. Okay. Persistent pre-run, persistent post-run. I'm guessing there's like persistent flags too. No. Interesting. So yeah, I haven't done enough Cobra lately to remember how to do that. Cobra, go flags. let's go look at their docs. And it's a bit bright. That's right. Yeah. I always forget who SPF 13 is. So let's think about this. Right, when we see Hugo server, port, etc., flag is a way to modify the behavior of a command. Right, okay. So it might not be possible to do global flags. So let's go look at how the commands are configured. And we do want to be careful, making sure that we're not looking at anything that would be proprietary. Now, where do we see commands actually coming from? That gets passed into new command root. And that gets called in commands.go. And this is where, yeah, okay, so all these commands, what do we think is a safe one to look at? Version, command version. So let me run that command, see if there's anything funky going on there. Sure. Okay. So I doubt our version check is like super proprietary. I don't think there would be a problem checking that out. Command doc, feedback. So yeah, get command version. And really, all this is going to do is call the creation of new command version. It is internationalized. Ooh, that is actually really cool. And this is where this command is getting set up. And again, like there's really not much here that is like super proprietary. Like this is just standard boilerplate for creating a command. So I think that's fine too. It gets assigned to an ID of admin. So if we go and do GK help, we see that that's how that like grouping is happening. So there's the core commands and there's the admin commands. I guess this isn't the best command to look at because it doesn't take in flags. So let's try and see if there is like a better command to look at. And really, I just let's look here first. So if we do GK help, and let's just say, which one of these do we think is going to take in a flag? Maybe PR? No, so we just have the -H. So yeah, we may not have that many flags in the CLI tool. Here we go. So opening the graph does have flags. I just want to see how that gets done. So new command graph here. Interesting. Here it is. So command dot flags is that part. So basically we've got the command here. It gets passed into this run E just in case, or not just in case, but just that's how that callback works. So it's kind of like self-referencing in this hook. And that way you can like get access to data that's defined on it. And that's where these like flags get defined here. I'm wondering, so I guess one big thing is, are we using Cobra in this project for like persistent config? Because a user would probably want to be able to configure this just once, right? Like, hey, the plugins I want are the plugins I want. If I want to edit it, like I'll just, you know, modify it later. And I know we're using persistent config because your login and logout logic would need to use it, right? Yeah, what I'm wondering is like, maybe there would be like a separate plugin command. Actually, that might be most useful. So then if your commands or if your plugins are set via that command, and then that is setting it on some Viper stuff, then we could just like load it without you having to specify it. That could be interesting. Okay. Yeah, all right, that would make sense. So like adding a new plugin would be like a single like command instance, and you would just run that plugin command multiple times if you want to add multiple plugins. Removing a plugin, listing your plugins would also just be like subcommands of the command. I like that idea. Okay. Yeah, I like that. So then over here, right, get command root, new command root. And then we got these, which is get something else root, etc. We would probably just want to create a new one called get command plugin. So yeah, we're going to have a bunch of failures here for a bit. Yeah, let me configure assorted biscuits real quick because I haven't done that on this machine yet. And I think for the Go code, it would be quite fun. All right, so extensions, assorted biscuits, cursor line only, no. Annotation color, we can leave. Elsewhere, max length 42, minimum distance, let's say 4. Annotation prefix, that's going to be language specific. So language settings here, then go. The annotation min distance will also set as 4. It's like annotation color. Let me go look at my docs real quick. Okay, so basically, if we were doing Rust, which we will eventually, it would look, oh, where is it? It would look something like this. Looks like Prettier is not running for us, which is fun. Okay. Yeah, so the Rust would look something like that, which means we can just take the boilerplate and do it here. And min distance as a string is interesting to me. Now the icon I want to use there is, let's see, gopher emoji. Is there one? Here we go. One of these would work. Chipmunk, I guess. Sure. All right, save that setting, and we are good to go. It's now in our Go code. Oh, invalid settings. Min distance must be of type number. Max length must be of type number. Yeah, okay. So yeah, I actually have that misconfigured. Or like set wrong in my README. But, nice. We see the gopher. Let's set the distance or the length to maybe like 42. And min distance down to 3. So yeah, there we go. Sweet. I like it. Just makes it look a little more fun. We could change the annotation color. Let's make that like an orange. And yes, I definitely got sidetracked a bit. I'm okay with it. Y'all okay with it? Much better. Now, actually, hold on. Golang has like an official blue, right? Where do we see the color? Come on. All right, Gopher Blue. There we go. They give us Pantone. We could do RGB, I think. So 173, 216. Pretty sure we can do that. Yeah. All right. So yeah, we got it in the Go for Blue now. Branding, obviously. Totally sidetracked. Kind of a fun experiment. So back to it though. Right. Let's go back to here. That does look nice. And yeah, we get like context in here that you just wouldn't get from the sticky header stuff. So I think assorted biscuits is still a very useful tool. It does run into some issues with certain languages, though. All right, so we got about 20 minutes left of today's stream. And you just want to mention again, if you've been considering getting Get Kraken, now is the best time to do it. It's 80% off depending on your location, up to 80% just depending. And yeah, like that's basically free at that point, isn't it? So yeah, yep, use coupon code DEVEXDAYS24 to get basically 80% off depending on your location. I forget the differences in locations, but yeah, best time of the year to actually give this a shot. And you get some of our pro features, such as the commit graph, the launchpad, and cloud patches. So yeah, definitely check it out if you get a chance. Really cool stuff. I'm going to be wiring up something to launchpad for our plugin system stuff. And, you know, I at least wanted to experiment with what adding a command for the CLI would look like, because I think it makes the most compelling use case of XDism, right? The Go code is a binary that you just really can't extend, you know, without some kind of plugin system like we're doing. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. GitLens, theoretically, if you wanted to hack on GitLens, it's in your local file system. You could hack on it yourself. It gets compiled and built into a file that would not be fun to actually edit by hand, but you could do it. So it's less compelling for extensibility. But I still think, yeah, we probably do want to do a plugin system for GitLens at some point. Like, I don't know for sure. Trying to think of good use cases for plugins, I think, is the tough part. Like, what kind of plugins would you all want to kind of like make, right? Things that GitLens or GitKraken just aren't doing in the way that you expect yet. But yeah, if we were to create a brand new command, right, we'd probably do it in here. We could probably just copy command status, rename it. Oh, we want it case sensitive though. And we would call this command plugin. We don't have any of this stuff created yet, so we're gonna have to do that. If we go to the top here, did it try and bring in something for plugin? I don't think it did, right? No. So yeah, plugin is still an error because it's undefined. Oh, and our auto formatter just did some stuff up here. Got it. That's easy enough. So we see command. It would probably just end up being up here in this section. I think they're going to end up sorting it for us anyway. So we do plug in like that. It's going to yell at us because it doesn't exist, but I don't want to do a save yet because it's, going to delete it. Let's go look in the file system here. We see commands.go. We see status here. That's probably where the status command is defined, right? Yep, new command status. And I doubt this is doing a whole lot. It does do some stuff. I at least just want to grab some of the boilerplate for it. So we're going to create a folder here, and the folder, we're going to call it plugin. We're going to create plugin.go. Paste a bunch of stuff in here. Rendering a URL, a PR, none of that makes sense. Changes list, probably, yeah. Stashes, like all these functions, actually, we're not going to need in here. We're going to create our own functions for that stuff. Now, hold on. Where are these getting run? Yeah, I think all of this is boilerplate. Aha, make run status. And the reason they do this, I think, is for testing reasons, right? You could do a make run status with injected things. They're using DI for some of this other stuff. Totally makes sense. But I want to look at this real quick. We see where all these are coming from. We don't necessarily want to show the contents of any of this. Again, just this is proprietary code still. But these are all the arguments to this. So we can do it a little like hot and loose. I may want to look at how some of the internationalization stuff works. But that might be proprietary. I don't know. So yeah, I think really make pre-run status, make run status. I don't think we need these, right? We're going to do this in a much simpler way. So yeah, pre-run. And this is actually like a status for the client or like the repo that you're in. So yeah, we don't need to check if it's a repo. I don't think we even need to do like the get OS file system stuff. So I think pre-run, not needed. Run E here, and then this is going to be just, hold on. Where does run F? Yeah, I don't want to dig too deep into what was inside of those other functions, just for, code safety, not exposing stuff that we want to not have out there yet. I don't think there's really that much that couldn't be open source, but that's not a decision for me to make. If we look at this, we probably don't need a flag. We would want to do some other stuff, though. And Where is runf coming from? Runf comes from new command status. That's if we wanted to, oh, and hold on. This would be new command plugin. I don't think we need these types. I don't think we're going to need that config, but we may just leave that boilerplate for now. If we save this file, it gets rid of like all of the imports that we're not using. Perfect. These are not defined. So we probably do need those types. I'm willing to bet those are like, no, those are command specific. So they're not that boilerplatey. Let's just do a save to get rid of what we don't need there. I think make run status here is what we're going to do a little like more loosey-goosey. But yeah, I think a lot of this stuff is done for testing reasons, which is interesting. So yeah, and I haven't done that much professional Go code. So in a lot of my side projects, I don't do that much testing on my Go code. If it works, it works, because they're like goofy little side projects for me. And yeah, how are we on time? Got about 10 minutes left. I do have a call directly after this. So yeah, will not be able to stay late myself. But I am enjoying these. Are you all enjoying these streams? It's nice and chill, just kind of like, you know, talking about and doing dev. You know, I'm enjoying it. Hope you all are too. I think we will want to at least go create that function. So func make run plugin. And it returns a, and hold on, this is where we want to go replace the word status pretty much everywhere in this page with plugin. Make run plugin is then going to have arguments, and T is this. What is the type of OS standard out? I think it's just oh, here it is. OS file. And we'll just call it standard out. Sure. The thing it's going to return is a run plugin F. And there we go. We have our function. It's now not, it's not doing the actual like creating of run plugin F yet. It looks like this actually needs to be a star, and then we're good there. And we are probably going to have arguments that we want to pass to this. And those arguments, yeah, how do we define those? That'll be me looking up some Cobra stuff. Status, short description. I'm going to do all this as plugin. We do get this as a failure. So here we would want to return func that. Okay, so we can return nil. We're not using those arguments, but this will at least compile. And then that means that in root command here, that should also compile. Oh, and it's not root command, it's commands.go, where we have command plugin. Yep, we're passing all that. And the runf, pre-runf do not get passed in. Sure. I don't think we're going to need a pre-runf, actually, so we could probably get rid of that. But okay. So we've got some basic boilerplate for how the plugin stuff might work. Yeah, let me think about this. We'd probably just want to manually handle the arguments. Let's go look at some more Cobra docs. We don't need the branding. So yeah, P flag might be what we're looking for. But let's go look at more about cobra.command. Now we could do child commands. That's probably the way to do that. But we could also just define the arguments. And args would be here. So positional args, let's go look at how that gets set up. All right, so what I want to do is find some examples. Go Cobra positional args example. So this is more about just like the help stuff. Okay. Yeah, so we do want to do subcommands. How do we do subcommands then? Yeah, because I think if we were to do like a list, like subcommand, but did it as like arguments, things would get wonky. So instead, yeah, Cobra sub command example. So there's root command dot add command. So realistically, I think I see. In where is it? In here? No. In here. Right, command is the thing. That's where we'd want to add this stuff. And I'm not sure this is actually what we're looking for at this point. But let's just fiddle with it and see what we get. So if we do cmd dot add command, that's where we'd want to create a function for that. Yeah, okay. So then this would be add plugin command. Is it maybe more like command add plugin? Sure. All right, and then we would also have func cmd remove plugin. And the other one would be hold on. When we see them creating the commands, where are those actually created? Do they just have like a link to the source code? Looks like Cobra has a CLI tool, which is actually really cool. I did not know that. Oh, and it's 12:03 already, so I don't want to keep someone hanging. So, yep, sorry. Time got away from me thinking about how to build this. But yeah, had a great day. Made some progress, like getting it working in GitLens. The GitLens part was actually pretty quick. And yeah, man, the XDism team really like knocked it out of the park with some of that configuration stuff. Because if we go here, just knowing that we would want to inject a fetch command because certain environments might not have the one that they're trying to use, awesome, like really well done. And that's probably also why they end up having the abstraction in the first place of like their own fetch instead of using a global fetch. So yeah, like really awesome. They did a great job with this PDK. Yeah, stoked on it. So I am going to hand things over to Allison, and she's going to get some really cool stuff going. She's going to get some GitCon recap stuff, I believe. So let me head over to Restream real quick. And we will get this video going, and I will see you guys again tomorrow. And we're going to keep hacking away on this. I think we may want to think about the actual like plugin API surface a bit more, rather than just hacking on command line boilerplate. But we'll see. I just kind of got sidetracked because I wanted to like stew on it a bit. I like using the diffuse thought process and getting to things later. So yeah, let me just, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I think we're good to go. I'm going to switch over to the video of Justin Cormack from GitCon Rewind. All right, later, everyone.
Hello, and welcome to GitCon. I'm Justin Cormack. I'm the CTO at Docker, and I'm also on the Cloud Native Computing Foundation Technical Oversight Committee. And I'm going to talk about the evolution of collaboration for developers. I'm going to give a kind of historical view and explain how we've come to where we are and how collaboration evolved and what trends and facts are important and what made it get the way it is. I'm going to start with a historical view. I always love to do historical based talks. Everyone who's seen my talks before knows that. So we're going to start in the 50s, but a lot of the interesting things happened in the 90s and 2000s, 2010s. 2010s really gets up to where it becomes modern and we recognize where we are now, and then we're going to talk about what's coming in the future. Open source is an interesting thing. When did it really start? One of the early tracing of it goes back to 1953 with a program originally written by Grace Hopper that UNIVAC sent out with the source code saying, if you want fixes to this, please send us back the fixes. If you want to make it better, send it back and we'll send them out in the next release. And that's really the spirit of open source. But that was, and that was often the culture for quite a long time after that. But the term open source didn't come till much later, of course. Version control is going to be very important in our story. The first version control systems were single user systems, kind of useful for, undoing when you'd done mistakes, but not really collaborative tools yet. Bell Labs built the first one in the early 70s. And we'll see there was a lot of, these became really important as part of a collaboration tool set later on. Another early thing, Ralph Merkle in 1979, who was a cryptographer at the time, invented Merkle trees. These are really the basis for which we use for Git and all the content address stores and the security properties we need in content address stores. And these are what Docker uses in Docker registries as well. So these are kind of important early pieces of technology that will fall into place much later. In the 80s, we really get the beginning of version control as we recognize it now. RCS was quite a popular system for a long time, but CVS came along in 1986 on top of RCS and built a client-server architecture so you could finally actually work as a team, not an individual, and this was really quite radical. It was the first kind of modern version control system in the sense it was for teams. And you could really use it to collaborate with teams, with a centralized server that the whole team used for their version control. In 1991, we got the first really interesting open source project in Linux. Linux was the first project that was huge scale, globally distributed, and really stretched the limits of how collaboration was working at the time. And we'll see later it drove a lot of innovation later just because of its scale and the nature of the work. I think a lot of the culture we have about like working from home and having a remote company being possible comes from the fact that Linux demonstrated that you could have a group of people who rarely or never met each other, but they would still collaborate successfully on a gigantic and extremely successful software project. it might seem strange to call out the URL. I mean, Tim Berners-Lee invented, the whole of the modern web as we know it. But the URL is really radical from the point of view of collaboration and sharing, in a way much more so than, say, HTML and HTTP. It came with as part of hypertext and how you get from one place to another on the page. But it's actually a really radical concept. Like, how many times a day do you paste a URL into a Slack or a chat, or give it to someone as a way of communicating? And URLs really became a thing about how do we encapsulate the object we're working on, the thing we're working on? How do we pass that state from one place to another? We got things like REST and state transformation and thinking about models and APIs, and all that really came from the one idea of the URL. And it's really quite a radical idea, and we'll see it's still continues to be really important, and it's the basis of a lot of ways in which we actually collaborate and the mechanisms of collaboration. Package management's an important part of the story about how we share content, how we share pieces of software. Sharing source code was obviously the starting point, but often it's convenient to share binaries and built packages and dependencies. And so there was a whole wave of innovation in the 90s around that, both the language package managers and the ecosystem of Linux package managers. CPAN became the first really wide-scale language package manager and an example to many others. It wasn't the first. It took itself from the tech network, CTAN. And then the things that became RPM and DEB were also pretty early, and there was a lot of innovation there. And these have stayed with us ever since, and they've been a really important part of how we build up software and work together with the broader community to consume software. Collaboration is about culture and how you do things as well as the tools. And I think Kent Beck's extreme programming was really one of the first things. It's really the precursor of Agile. And it came from a kind of philosophy of like, how do we work together to iterate fast on software, understand the customer, understand the process. And it really came from, these different timescales of iteration, from pair programming, in sitting down with someone, reviewing code on the spot, collaborating on the spot, through longer cycles of iteration with the customer. And it's been very influential in many ways. It still affects how we think about these feedback loops and collaboration. But it's also really important just to think about, what's the culture and the way we're working together. That's really the basis for how we use collaboration tools and how we think about collaboration and how we want to work together. In 1999, SourceForge came along, and SourceForge is you can see it as a precursor of GitHub in many ways. It gave, version control to open source projects to consume, had the discovery of projects, and some people still call any kind of Git hosting platform a forge as a generic term coming from SourceForge. So we can see a lot of the underlying pieces of the, how do we discover, how do we collaborate, how do we find each other coming into the ecosystem at this point. Version control systems became an important area. And again, Linux was really driving a lot of this work. Linux was a huge project compared to other projects. It had so many contributors. And so it ran into so many problems with the existing version control systems. And a program came along called BitKeeper that was a decentralized distributed version control system for the first time. And that really fitted well with Linux's model. But unfortunately, it was closed source, and it was given to Linux contributors as long as they didn't compete with it. And some of them decided, Andrew Tridgell decided that was not really acceptable. There was lots and lots of rows and flame wars about this. And in the end, Linus spent a week or so and built Git. And the world changed forever from there, and it became extraordinarily widely adopted. It kind of became the most used system after a number of years. And it's really what we all use today and recognize today. But it was really designed to support the Linux project and that its workflows, and it's really just been extended to other use cases since then. A lot of people will be surprised to hear that Nixos is 20 years old this year. I think at the time it wasn't as influential and important as it is now, but many of the ideas it came up with, like how to structure a package management system, reproducibility, immutability, those things have fed back into how we do things now, and it's becoming increasingly widely used. A lot of the ideas seem to have little overlaps with Docker, but as far as I know, there wasn't any real kind of overlap at the time. It was just kind of parallel discovery of many of the same things, particularly around the benefits of immutability and just deploying once. In 2006, when Amazon released S3, I remember being incredibly excited by it. This was the first cloud service, the first product from Amazon Web Services, shortly followed by EC2. But S3 is really radical in many ways. It was Jeff Bezos called it malloc for the internet. Allocate some memory, put stuff in it, refer to it with a URL. This was pretty radical stuff. It comes back to our talk about the URL as being radical. This was, let's put infrastructure behind a URL so you can just use it with the URL. It really was like the kind of taking the API and really turning it into something radically new. And it's been extremely influential. Obviously, this is, it was the birth of cloud, and cloud has really, changed the world since then as well. In 2008, a company called Logical Awesome LLC released a product called GitHub. They soon changed their name to match the product, of course. GitHub was interesting in many ways. In some ways, it copied things like SourceForge, but it was much more friendly, easy to use. It came out of the kind of Rails community in terms of ideas about front-end design. It had URLs for everything, kind of incorporated through its structure, so everything was easy to share through URLs. It gave a lot away for free for open source projects. It invented the pull request, so it changed the way we do things. It moved from the kind of Linux model of sharing, having peer-to-peer sharing of patches and diffs through email, and into something where there was a much more centralized model, and you could ask the maintainer to incorporate your changes, or you could fork and build your own thing, but then you could still share back again later. And it changed the model and the way people thought about centralization for a long time. And people joke about it re-centralizing a decentralized service, and it's got some truth in it. But we also gained a lot from that. Again, the things that we'd learned about discovery, and it rode the explosion in Git and open source. 2009, we're getting back to culture and community and working together. The DevOps movement started a little before that, but DevOps Days was kind of the date I used to start it with. Getting people together and saying it's not about how we do things, it's about how we work together. Bring developers and ops people together, help them work together, help them build tools to communicate with each other, help them communicate each other by having a common understanding of what we're doing. This became, very influential for a long period of time. It really set the framing around how cloud native evolved and how a lot of our infrastructure toolings evolved. And again, it reflects the importance of the way we collaborate depends on the way we want to work together as a community, and that's incredibly important. 2010 saw the birth of NPM, which, yes, it's another language package manager, but it exploded in popularity. It's become the largest package management system in the world by orders of magnitude. People, joke about tiny dependencies like leftpad that caused all sorts of issues later, but it produced a way of working that was really about collaboration, code reuse at a scale that had not been seen before. And it brought millions of developers into the world of open source and code reuse. And it really, really showed that you could do these things really at scale. And that was, doing package management at scale was qualitatively different, not just different numbers. It's brought all sorts of learning and lessons about things, and it's a really interesting, kind of as a culture as well. And I think that's really important as well. 2011 is kind of where I date the beginning of microservices. It's a very fuzzy term. The term kind of went through various variations, but that's kind of a starting point. But it's kind of the point at which it started to explode. That diagram's from Monzo. It's their microservices by team, and it kind of shows the way we've started to organize things in many places. And that complexity was driven a lot by the fact that, coding was becoming more important, software was becoming more important. We had a lot more people in an organization, and we had to change the way the people were organized and the way teams were organized and the way we worked together. And small collaborative units, which is what extreme programming was pushing for, a decade earlier, became the norm. People couldn't work, found it really difficult in many cases to work on giant monoliths. They wanted to work on smaller, more self-contained units that they could understand the whole of. And so this became a big change. And Docker itself, it came from that same world. Docker grew up hand in hand with microservices. I think that, they were at the right time for each other. Docker kind of synthesizes a lot of these ideas together. Containers are something like packages, but they're very, very easy to use. But they're not single language like NPM was. So they brought this kind of mixture of containerization, packaging, sharing, build, share, run, that kind of modality, like to a huge audience of millions, tens of millions of developers. And they brought a culture of, simple and easy to use that, is part of the modern software development, stack, and the idea and the way that software is successful now is by being simple and easy to use and being exciting to use. I think that we share with GitKrock and that kind of culture of building tools that are easy to use and that developers love and that make their life easier. We just released Docker Scout into general availability, and I kind of wanted to connect it to these things. Docker Scout is a tool we've actually been working on for some time internally. It's just gone GA, but it's really a database that actually ties together a lot of these different types of things. It ties together packages, Git, a source code, and containers, to tell you what's inside your container, to help you update your container, to tie back the container to the source code and the packages to their source code. So it's really a database and a kind of metadata graph and store for all the kinds of things that we've been talking about people collaborating over. So it's really also acts as a tool to help you understand the space of the collaboration, which is a really important area. I think we kind of sometimes underestimate how much, we need to actually have a kind of historical database that we can actually do queries and do operations. Git bisect is one of the things that Git brought, and version control brought, understanding your code over history and understanding all the things you're using over history, because it turns out to be really important. Time to reflect on how we got here and where we're going from here. We've really seen it's important that, culture, tools, practice, org structure, all these things grow up together and influence each other. It's not about building a tool to have a better experience. It's building a tool that fits with the changes in organizational structure and helps them and fits in with the culture of the times, fits in with the organizations that people are trying to build and trying to change, and the problems that people are finding in those organizations. So it's really, you can't just build something, and hope that it'll succeed because it's cool. It's got to fit in. It's got to fit in the zeitgeist, fit in the culture, fit in the way that people want to work. And this is really important. It's important to understand where people's pains are, where people's dreams and aspirations are for building tools. Collaboration in software started with source code, and we can see that from, you know, some of our earliest projects we looked at in the 50s and 70s even were about version control, sharing source code, open source. But then we saw pretty early on that it wasn't just source code we needed to share and collaborate on. Package management became important because people wanted to share, you know, big collections of libraries and dependencies they were using. And then Docker became really successful because people wanted to share whole applications or, you know, components of applications in a more effective way. And so we can really see that sharing and collaboration is at the full spectrum of every kind of artifact and every piece of the process with software. The whole software development lifecycle has collaboration points in it. And as more and more of the world gets incorporated into being software and software eats the world, all of these points have collaboration points, you know, in these different forms of software as binaries and source code and full applications and all the bits in between. And so this really becomes very expansive. One of the things this means is that we need to bring a lot more context to the developer. Often collaboration consists, and like interfaces for developers just consist of telling them a lot of things that are happening. But as the complexity grows, we really need to think more about, are we bringing the right context to the developer at the right time? You know, how should we prioritize the different kinds of collaboration they need to do? When should we do things? We don't want to interrupt people when they're in the flow with a notification. We want to, you know, build a system for prioritizing and understanding the work they have to do. A lot of the work we're doing with Docker Scout is really around trying to understand how we bring the right context to developers effectively. Software engineering is really about engineering in a world of constant change. And so managing software over time and over that change becomes really important. You can imagine you're sitting there, you know, inside your organization, and both inside and outside your organization, actually, people are changing software that you depend on, that you use, that you rely on in different ways, and understanding whether those changes matter, how much can be automated, what you need to know becomes really, really key. And I think that we're going to see much more collaboration around this, you know, these kind of developer data models, developer, you know, collaboration systems in order to make that work more effectively. And we're going to end up reinventing a lot of, or modifying, or kind of automating a lot of the tools we built. We've already seen that, for example, GitHub pull requests that were very much a person-to-person thing have become an area in which, like, people actually collaborate, you know, with the computer. Like, there's a bot opens a pull request, and we haven't necessarily worked out how to deal with these workflows most effectively. There's still a kind of like, should they be treated the same? You know, how should we work with automation? We've seen, you know, through this talk that a lot of the complexity, you know, is being reflected in changes in the organization, and the organization has changed to deal with a huge number of, you know, developers that come in, the huge amount of software that's being built and used and dealt with by the organization. And, you know, if we look again at this diagram from Monzo about their microservices and teams, you know, we see that understanding the state of your organization and getting a view on what's going on as a whole, you know, what's our security posture as a whole, what's the overall state of things, where are the risk points, which teams are, you know, delivering new software effectively, which teams are perhaps not being, you know, stuck with a big update from an old version, you know, all those kinds of facts and, you know, posture of your teams become really important to understand, you know, from the top-down organization point of view. You know, it's quite complex, but this is a data and understanding problem. You know, people are spending more time, you know, putting in systems to help them understand what are the services that are in production, and what are they doing, and who owns them, and should they still be there, and how much are they costing, and, you know, all these top-down organizational things become really important. And I think that this is a different kind of collaboration. It's a collaboration, kind of often with the, business and costing side of things. It's often a collaboration around, management structures, but it's also about, are things correctly resourced as well. So this is a different kind of collaboration we're seeing being much more important. It kind of goes in waves. We're seeing a lot of cost cutting in many organizations. Are trying to work out if they're spending too much on the cloud. But those kind of decisions about value for money, are complex and data-driven decisions where you need to understand, what are the outputs and what depends on what, and what are the bits of software in your organization that are, high risk or high cost, and what could you do about them? So there's this very much a top-down collaboration, or kind of organization-wide collaboration around this sort of thing that's becoming increasingly important. And again, it's one of the things with Docker Scout, we're focusing on those kinds of areas as well to give an organizational view of your software supply chain. We've seen another thing that's kind of quite sinister in a way, is that supply chain attacks are really attacks on the culture and sharing and collaboration mechanisms that we've built. For a long time, everyone was saying, open source has many eyes, has fewer bugs, it's much safer even than your own code. But then, people are attacking open source because it's a way into an organization, because organizations are consuming so much open source, and it's become a threat. And that's a threat to the way we work together, the way we collaborate, and our trust in each other. And that's actually really, a difficult thing, that we've all got to work together as a community to strengthen that trust and understand how we deal with these threats together. Data has entered the room. Data has become much more important. Our data scientists, data engineers are all working much more closely with software engineers. We're doing AI ML models. We all work with data in our jobs to a greater or lesser extent. And these kind of issues and collaboration and working together are becoming really important. And at Docker, we're doing a lot of work with AI ML and bringing the container workflows to people who find out that they need it in these areas too. And also thinking about things like, there's data versioning and how to bring data into systems more effectively, more quickly and smoothly are becoming really important as well, and how to version things like models and new kinds of artifacts that are appearing on Docker Hub and other places. As we mentioned before, how should we work with automation is becoming an increasingly important question. As we get more and more AI helping us, that becomes even more critical. At the moment, we've got systems like Copilot that are kind of modeled on a sort of pair programming kind of flow, well, they're not really quite the same, but kind of maybe that spirit. But what if you had a team of AI helpers that would you collaborate more like a team does? How do we work together to do things like, if they're not fully reliable, how do we build a good testing framework around AI? And so we have new collaboration paradigms that we've got to work out, and I think those are going to be really important if we're going to bring on that dream of extra productivity and extra ability for developers to create more amazing things with more support from the tooling and AI. As a community, we can all work together to bring collaboration, new ways of collaboration, new ways of working as a community together. Tools are part of that. Culture is a part of that. Process is part of that. Organizational structure is part of that. It's a big whole. Sometimes seems scary, but as a community, we can help each other and work together and explore the space of new tools. And it's a really exciting space to be in. And it's really exciting to be at GitCon and work with GitKraken, who are share the same view of us with us as about where we can make collaboration work, how we can make tools work better together. Thanks so much. Great to be here.
for those of you still here with us, that was Justin Cormack's keynote presentation at last year's GitCon. Thanks for tuning into today's live stream. Again, just want to reiterate, we are going live this week as part of DevX Days. So we have some really big savings on GitKraken Pro seats. So if you're interested in getting your first Pro seat, or if you want to acquire additional Pro seats, this is our lowest price of the year. The coupon code is case sensitive, so just keep that in mind. But you can also scan this QR code with your phone, and it should take you directly to the purchase page for some more information. Also, as a part of DevX Days, we are sponsoring open source projects on GitHub. So you can either comment here in chat before we hop out in just a few minutes, or you can make a post tagging us on social and including the hashtag DEVEXDAYS24 with any projects or contributors that you think are working on some cool stuff. All right. Thank you again, everyone. We will be live for the rest of this week, so we will catch you here same time and place tomorrow. Chris will be working more on his project, and we will also have another workshop stream. So we will see you then. Thanks for everybody for participating in chat. We appreciate it.